Hello, and welcome to the Sound Up Seattle podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Seattle and Washington sports. Today, we are not talking solely about Seattle and Washington sports because it is John and I's probably favorite time of the year. It's March Madness, every basketball fanatic's favorite 3 weeks of the season. And so what we are going to do in this pod is we're gonna fill out a whole bracket. We're just going to go through and we're going to talk through basically every matchup, how we think it's going to go. And at the end of this, you're going to have the Sound Up Seattle official 100% correct bracket that you should follow if you want to win all those sweepstakes on ESPN, CBS, Allstate, wherever you're filling out brackets. Anything to say, John, before we get started?
No, let's dive in. Let's get it right.
All right, here is some Coyote Picnic. All right, John. So, first things first, before we get started, I am going to rip off a hot take that I don't think that the world is ready for, because I have one overarching view of this entire tournament, or kind of two, but like I'm going to combine it into one, and that is that the SEC and the Big 12 are way overhyped right now. Like, I feel like the big conferences, obviously they have all the big teams, but the big conferences also played all of the crap teams in those conferences, and so they stacked up a lot of wins, but they also beat each other up a ton, and there's a lot of parity in the tops of those conferences. The SEC, obviously, with 2 number 1 seeds, a couple number 2s, like they got all of the hype for this season, and I just don't think the SEC is that good compared to, the best of the ACC. Duke is probably the highest rated team in the tournament right now, but you've got other teams, Michigan as a 5 seed out of the Big Ten is just like, that doesn't really make sense when compared to Clemson. Clemson seems a lot better than Michigan. So I'm just looking at things like that when it comes to my bracket. Did you have anything that you wanted to discuss before we hop in?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think the SEC hype is particularly one to note this year. Michigan is a 5. It's worth noting they won the Big Ten tournament. So
they did.
That helps you climb the rankings. I actually like Michigan this year a lot. I like Clemson too. But yeah, I do think the SEC hype, it's complicated. Obviously, yeah, 2 1 seeds, 5 teams with 3 seeds or above. They had, 10, 11, 12, 13 teams make the NCAA tournament. 13 out of 15 SEC teams. LSU and South Carolina have got to be feeling pretty lonely sitting there at the bottom. But we had both Oklahoma, who was 6-12 in conference play, 6-12, not 6 of 12. They won a third of their conference games. And Texas, also at 6-12, both make the tournament, which is a little staggering. And I think the reason for that is I do think the SEC is pretty monstrous this year. I just think the amount of athleticism they have, the number of athletic guards and the athletic bigs that they have in the SEC this year is pretty frightening. But I do think it's gone a little too far. Like, I have no issue with Auburn and Florida both getting 1 seeds. I am petrified of both of those teams. I have no problem with Tennessee getting a 2. I think I have Tennessee winning one of my 3 brackets. But yeah, letting, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Vanderbilt into this tournament just seems a little generous to a conference. I'm really not sure they needed 13 representatives. So that's a lot, lower teams in the SEC, maybe pick on them a little bit. But there is a lot of talent. We'll talk about Georgia, no doubt, number 9 in the SEC. And I'm not feeling like that's a cakewalk. So, yeah, a lot of SEC love. The question will be, is it deserved?
Yeah. All right. So the way this is going to work, before we get started, John and I both have taken over 2, what are those, quadrants of the bracket? 2 quadrants of the bracket. And so I've got the South and the West, and John is going to take over the East and the Midwest. And what we're going to do, so we have, ample time to discuss and prepare. We're going to each talk about our games one at a time. So like for me, I'm going to be in the South region. I'm going to talk about the Auburn and whatever winner comes out of that 16 game for the kind of play-in. And so I'm going to talk about that. And then John's going to jump over on the East side, talk about Duke and whatever winner of that 16 seed game comes out. And then we're just going to kind of work down the list. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fast-paced, and we're going to get a lot of basketball talks in. Yeah, anything to say, John, before we just dive right in?
No, let's do it. There's going to be a lot of talk here. Try to keep up. Also, try to be patient with us. We're going to have games where we have more takes than others. There are 64 teams to talk about, and to tell you the truth, I don't know shit about American, so we're just going to have to go for it.
All right. Well, to make it easy for us all, we've got 2 number 1 seeds, each of us. So let's go for my first game, the Auburn versus either, what is that, Alcorn State or... I don't even know what the SWAC team, or no, that's out of the SWAC.
It's
SFU.
Alabama State and St. Francis U.
Yeah, shows you how much I really prepped for this one.
Not San Francisco. We got Alabama State versus St. Francis U, which is ongoing. St. Francis U is currently up 29-26. They have God on their side. Yeah, how do you think either one of those teams is going to fare against the best team in the SEC?
Like I said, didn't prepare much. I think Auburn cakewalks away with this one. They are second in the net, 10-5 versus top 25 teams, second in strength of schedule, all this stuff you can see on CBS. It's all really good stats. The one thing that's a little overrated about Auburn is just like their general, I guess, shooting. Like they're not as top tier of a shooting team that you could see like comparatively to a team like Duke or some other teams like that. Yale is actually really good shooting. So I just think Auburn runs away with this game either way, but I don't think there's much to say other than that.
Yeah,
just looking at the Auburn for the future. You know,
we don't want to step on each other's toes too much, but I have to say, if the number 1 seed coming out of the SEC, the most touted conference arguably in the history of the tournament, were to lose to a 16 seed, I would cry with joy, but yeah, probably not. Probably not a safe bet.
Imagine both number 1 seeds in the SEC lose to 16s.
It would be glorious.
Validation for this podcast. But we are taking Auburn in this first game.
Florida would sink into the ocean. That would be it. The Gators would be done. All right. On my side of the bracket, I've got Duke versus the winner of American University and Mount St. Mary's, my second favorite St. Mary's related school in this tournament. And yeah, this one's pretty easy. Duke is the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. They are first in the net. They are first in KenPom. They are first in the AP poll. They are the only Division I Power 5 team that has 3 or fewer losses. They have probably the number 1 pick in the draft in Cooper Flagg and just a ton of really high-level shooting on that team. We'll talk more about Duke going forward, but they are really good. They do have some weaknesses, but they are an awesome college basketball team. So sorry, American. Next time.
Yeah, not much to say there. I think even there's a world where Cooper Flagg plays like 12 minutes of this game and just gets some rest before the real next game starts and the real first game for Duke. But yeah, I see Duke running away with that, even if Cooper Flagg stays injured and doesn't play. So an exciting first round matchup for them. My next game, we got number 8 Louisville versus number 9 Creighton. This is where things can get a little interesting, a little dicey in terms of which team is better, which team people are picking. It's currently 57% of the population picking Louisville and 43% picking Creighton. For me, I look at this game and Louisville's coming out of the ACC, probably a stronger conference. Creighton does have some good games against some top-tier opponents coming out of the Big East, but Ryan Kalkbrenner, they're a team with experience, but I don't think they're a team that has all of the like kind of firepower that you need to go deep into this tournament. I think Kalkbrenner is kind of their only guy, and he's a great interior defender. Actually, the more that I look at this game, the more that I've been thinking about it, I'm gonna zag against what I was just about to say. I think Creighton's experience, Kalkbrenner being the interior defenseman that he is, and Louisville shooting so poorly, I think Creighton's actually going to make them shoot threes. And the more that I look at these stats, the more I look at both of these teams, I actually kind of like Creighton here.
Yeah, I don't mind that pick. It's going to be a good game. Louisville's got the size, but Creighton's got some good shooting, man. I appreciate it. I love you talked yourself out of it mid-round.
Yeah.
That's great. We love
That's going to happen a few times. That's going to happen a few times here.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a pretty interesting one on my side as well. That is the Mississippi State Bulldogs against the Baylor Bears in the 8-9. I really don't love this matchup for a couple of reasons. Baylor, some really talented players, obviously a program that's been awesome under Scott Drew, but they are 5-12 in quad one wins, making Gonzaga look pretty good. So they've had an up and down season, but have not been very good against high level competition. On the other side of things, Mississippi State is 8th in the SEC, sitting just above Georgia, 8-10 in conference. I'm really not sure how much I believe in them either. With that being said, when in doubt, go with best player, and I do think VJ Edgecombe is an absolute stud, probably a top 10 pick on Baylor. I have them advancing over the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. These 8-9 matchups, they're kind of a toss-up right now. These are a lot of good teams at this point. We've been talking about it for a while, but college basketball right now is a very deep, a lot of parity in it. And so I think the Baylor-Mississippi State matchup is tough. Louisville-Creighton's tough. But I do like, the star power of Baylor going up against Mississippi State. I think they can come out on top there. So nice. We're in agreement on a few of these picks.
Love it.
Okay. Here's where I'm going to veer a little bit. We've got number 5 Michigan versus number 12 UC San Diego. And listen, a lot of people, you just said Michigan just won the Big Ten tournament. Michigan is on a little bit of a heater right now, but they've won 6 of their last 10. They have been kind of a middling offense all season, and the one thing that they really have been unable to do is pull away from teams. They're a team that is just, they don't win, or they only win close games. They don't ever blow out teams. And in this tournament, if you're going to upset or if you're going to beat a 12 seed, especially a team that's 30-4, won their last 10 games and is shooting 37% from 3, that's going to be tough. And if you're not putting this team away, this team is going to hang around. And in this kind of tournament, I think UC San Diego is the perfect team to take as a 12 seed, upsetting a 5. I actually really like, UC San Diego. Wow. They're also
you really want to say UC Irvine there. I can see you fighting it.
I just wanted to say San Diego, but I forgot about the UC part. But yeah, they're also 36th in KenPom, and Michigan is only 25th. Like, these teams are very close, all things considered. It just doesn't feel like it because UC San Diego has not played any top 25 teams. But I think this is a good challenge, and I think they're up for it. I've got this UC San Diego team moving on.
Wow. Love the upset. Don't love who it's against. I have Michigan advancing to the Final Four in one of my brackets. I think they're really talented, but that's your side of the bracket, so I'm not going to argue with you.
That's my one that I've been like, in most of my brackets, I've been like, I kind of see it, and I've just been going for it.
I love it. I love the upset train. I have a couple coming up, but you'll also see as we advance into the later rounds. That's when my upsets really come in. I'm fairly chalk in the first round, but coming up, I got Oregon Liberty on the 5-12 line. Oregon, good team in the Big Ten. They've had an up and down year, but they were ripping. I think they'd won 9 or 10 straight before losing in the quarters to Michigan State, who is another one of my favorite teams in this tournament. Oregon's talented. They obviously have shooting and some athleticism, a lot of money in that program. They're going up against an interesting 12 here. I was almost tempted to take Liberty. I did not know this, but Liberty is the best overall shot selection of any D1 team in terms of advanced metrics, and they sit number 1 in effective field goal percentage. So they are very, very sound offensively. I just think they're too small and too slow to hang with the high flyers out of Eugene. It's going to turn into a track meet, and we know how Oregon does in those. So I do have the 5-seed Oregon advancing.
Yeah, a little rematch of that bowl game from this most recent season, or I guess 2 seasons ago now, where Oregon really Bo Nix put the hurt on Liberty. So We'll see if they can try and get a revenge game going, but I do not think that is the case here. All right, another interesting matchup here. We've got number 4 Texas A&M versus number 13 Yale. And listen, I know you guys are going to say, "Hey, this guy just loves upsets," but just look at the just pure stats. Texas A&M shoots sub 42% from the field. That's 330th in all of college basketball. Yale shoots 49% from the field. That's 11th in all of college basketball. From the 3, they're 7th. They shoot over 38.5% from 3. Texas A&M shoots sub 31.5. Like Texas A&M is 322nd. Gosh, things are hard to say right now. 322nd in all of college basketball in their ability to shoot the 3. And this is Yale, guys. This is a team that's been here before, and they know what they're doing. This coach has been here for however long, and they've won these tough games, and they've been a 13 seed before and taken out a 4 seed. I really have a lot of faith in this Yale team. They've also John Poulikitis, their guard, averaging 19 points per game. He's just a pure scorer. He's a guy that can score from anywhere on the court, and I think in a tournament like this, it's kind of similar to that VJ Edgecombe. It's like Yale has their guy that they will turn to, and he'll just drop buckets. And I actually really trust Yale in this 4-13 matchup. So I'm going to take Yale here.
Yeah, I like this upset a lot more than the UC San Diego one. A little shade on it, the SEC as well, which I dig. Yale is an awesome 13 seed. They always can just shoot the stripes off the ball. One thing I will just say in terms of general strategy for our listeners, one of my favorite things to do is when you're taking, a 12 or 13 upset, I really like taking that upset when they meet a team you really like in the next round. Because, every once in a while you'll get that miracle run where a, double-digit seed advances 2 or 3 rounds. But, a great way of winning your bracket is to get those early upsets, but not get caught with the wrong teams in your Sweet 16. So one strategy, I'll just say in a personal bracket, I definitely have Yale advancing and then playing Michigan, who I really like, and then I have Michigan advancing out of that. So if you're looking for a little strategy, a little gamesmanship, look for those 12-13s that will, in the next round, play one of your favorites. Because then if you're right, you win big. If you're wrong, hopefully you get your team in the next round anyway. So just something to keep your eye on. I like the Yale.
We all know John loves a hedge.
I do love a hedge. You're going to get an example of this exact thing I'm talking about right here. One of my only major upsets in the first round. We've got number 4 Arizona versus 13 Akron. And I am taking my Ohio boys over Danny Lloyd and the Arizona Wildcats to advance to the next round. The reason for this is almost purely Arizona-based. No shade to Akron, but I can't really say a single thing about them. I don't know a single player on that team. I saw the Zips had a nice comeback win in the MAC, I believe, to make the tournament, but I don't know a single thing about them. This is entirely based on 3 things. 1, spite for Tommy Lloyd. This is what you get for leaving Gonzaga. Now I pick against you. 2, Arizona has some nasty history when it comes to devastating upset losses in the first round of the tournament. Twice in the last...
See us in 2023?
yeah. Twice in the last 5 years, they have lost to double-digit seeds in the first round of the tournament. And the third, and most important to me personally, is Caleb Love. Caleb Love is the star of this Arizona team. He leads them in scoring at almost 17 points a game, and not only is he maybe the black hole of college basketball when the ball is in his hand, but he also loves shooting his team out of the game. Now, he has obviously the ability to completely carry you to a win against a great team, but I think Arizona is as likely to lose to Akron as they are to lose to Duke. They're the kind of team that lives and dies with Caleb Love's right hand, and I'm just not a big believer in his game. The Wildcats have also been super sporadic. They started the season 4-5, won 13 of their next 14, and then lost 5 of their next 11. So they have been really unable to get consistent play going. Caleb is bringing them down. Give me the Zips.
Yeah, I think so. 2 years ago when we did this, we had Arizona winning the entire tournament, and then they lost as a 2 seed to a 15. So we've been burned by Arizona before. We're not going to do it again.
Fool me once.
And then last year, I think we were actually pretty spot on with Arizona because of this similar discussion about Caleb Love and his erratic shooting. So
yeah, they lost in the first or second round. I can't remember last year, but 100%. So I think we just have kind of their number. Hopefully this one pays off big.
Exactly. Yeah, I appreciate that one. The one thing that I'm a little concerned about is just Akron as a team. I don't know how well that they stack up against a more fast-paced team like Arizona. But If you're going to take an upset, like you said, take one that you like, the other team that they're going to play. And I do like Oregon a lot in that second round. So we'll talk about that later. All right. In my next game, we've got Ole Miss versus the winner of San Diego State or UNC. And the San Diego State-UNC game is happening tonight. And I'm excited to watch this one. It's going to be kind of some teams that over the last couple of years have been really prominent in the tournament, and this is kind of their down year. I think they'll both be probably back in and pushing for a high seed next year. But right now, these teams have not been very good. Do I trust either one of them more than Ole Miss? Probably not. I think North Carolina statistically is a better team. They just they shoot better. They rebound better. They're on more of a heater. They've won 8 of their last 10. All these against decent teams in the ACC. But my main thing is it comes down to RJ Davis for North Carolina. I think they're going to win. And if North Carolina is coming up against Ole Miss, do they have the ability to beat a good team? They're 1-8 against top 25 opponents this season. And I just don't believe in this North Carolina team right now. I don't think they're really guided in the way that that they have been in the past, and I think that's from the absence of Roy Williams, right? So I'm going to take Ole Miss here, but I don't feel great about it. I think any one of these, this is a game that's really a toss-up for me, but I will take the higher seed and just the more consistent SEC team.
Dig it. I respect it. We got to give the SEC a tiny bit of love. If we pick them to lose every one of these first-round games, I do think we'll be sorry. Moving to the other side, we've got the 6-seed BYU versus 11-seed VCU. This is a closer game in terms of net rankings than you would think. Depending on if you're looking at the net or KenPom, BYU's sitting in the 24 to 26 range, VCU's in the 30 to 32 range. So relatively tight in terms of advanced statistics. But, VCU coming out of the Atlantic 10, strength of competition's pretty low. They're only 2-1 in quad one. BYU's 8-7 in quad one, so not a way better record, but certainly way more experience in these high-level games. They can shoot the hell out of the ball. They pass the ball well as a team. They've got 9 players averaging over 6 points per game, which just speaks to their really fluid kind of Gonzaga-like offense. And, never doubt the overconfidence of a white boy come March. This BYU team, believe it or not, is littered with them. So I do like BYU. They're probably my favorite 6 seed in the tournament. I have them taking down VCU.
Yeah, I think BYU, they're just a very potent offense. They've been averaging like almost 90 points a game over the last couple weeks, and they've been kind of hitting their stride at the right moment. I do like BYU, and in my own brackets, I do have them making Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four runs. So it's been a high BYU year for me. So that doesn't indicate good things for them. I had them going deep last year, and they did not. They lost in the first round as a 6 seed last year. So we'll see if they can repair those damages this season. But for my matchup, I've got number 3 Iowa State coming up against number 14 Lipscomb. Yeah, that sounds right. It's a weird word. And I think this is an easy one for me.
Who are you going to take?
Not played Lipscomb has not played anybody good. Their strength of schedule is 258, and in their top 25 opponents, against top 25 opponents, they're 0-2. They snuck in just by winning their conference, and I think Iowa State is a good team out of the Big 12. Was really good last year and kind of underperformed, so I'm going to actually go against the grain on there and ride with them. I think their experience from the last couple of years has been good for them, so I'll take Iowa State here.
I dig it. Yeah, I think Iowa State's really good. Their offense is electric. I like it a lot. Hopping to the other side, we have 3-seed Wisconsin versus 14-seed Montana. This Wisconsin team is really, really good. One of the best in the Big Ten, in my opinion. Big Ten, right? They're not in the Big 12.
Yeah, Big Ten.
Okay, yeah, I was spacing out for a sec. Under Greg Gard, this is as high a seed as they've gotten under this coaching staff. They were a 5 last year, so they've been pretty consistent in terms of this high-level play. Their offense is really good for Wisconsin basketball. Defense is really scrappy. I really like this Wisconsin team. I do think they're a little overrated at a 3 seed, but going up against Montana is not much of a question. So I do have Wisconsin advancing. It's worth noting that they sit behind Gonzaga in the net. Gonzaga's 8. Wisconsin sits down at 14. In the pre-tournament CBS Sports rankings, Gonzaga sits at 14, Wisconsin at 15, and Wisconsin's the 3 seed while Gonzaga's an 8 seed. So life isn't always fair. And remember to take your lumps while you can. But we'll go ahead and have Wisconsin advance.
Yeah, I do like this Montana team. They've been really rounding into form since probably like mid-January, maybe start of February. But it is a tough matchup going up against a Wisconsin team that's just very balanced, a good offense, good defense, and they've just been doing their own thing in the Big Ten for a while now and just consistently achieving. So I do like Wisconsin in that one, but I expect a tough game. So I guess there's not much else to say, but Montana, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if they come around. For my next game, number 7 Marquette versus number 10 New Mexico out of the West. Out of the South? I'm dumb.
Out of the South.
Yeah, the South. This is a tough game. This is a tough game to predict. Both of these teams are very good. Marquette 26th in the net, New Mexico 42nd. They both kind of rely heavily on their main guards in Cam Jones and Donovan Dent. Cam Jones averaging 19.3 points per game 4.5 rebounds, almost 6 assists, and Donovan Dent 20.5 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists. Like these are good players, and it's a good matchup. Marquette lost some really important pieces from last year in, I think it was Kolek, right? Tyler Kolek was their main point guard, and Cam Jones was kind of the shooting guard that would come in and score off the bench. And Cam Jones has taken a big step here in this season, but I think there's just not much else in terms of Marquette's offense here. And I do like New Mexico. They went 17-3 in the Mountain West, 26-7 on the season. They're a really, really good team. And Donovan Dent, and defensively, this New Mexico team is just going to be a tough matchup for a Marquette team that kind of reminds me of like an elevated Washington team from years ago, where it was like, give the ball to somebody and let them try and score. Like they're not as flowy as a good style offense. So a staggering defense can stymie them. And I do think that this New Mexico team can do that.
Nice. Yeah, I like the New Mexico call. I think Marquette's still getting a little bit of love from their last couple seasons of like really top tier play. They've been very up and down. So yeah, when you're going to take an upset, pick it against these teams that cannot play consistently, and you may be happy. Good for the Lobos. Love to see it. Not a lot of Wolf love out there.
I remember I loved Marquette last year, so I was just like, I think they were a 2 seed, and I was like, I think I had them going all the way, or at least to like the Final Four in a lot of brackets, and they fell off a little bit.
Yeah, they were kind of Arizona-esque for sure. It's one thing. It's like guard play is so important in the later rounds of the tournament. But in the first couple rounds, really don't estimate how important it is to have awesome bigs. Big reason Arizona got upset. Big reason Marquette got upset. It's not all about guards in the first couple of rounds. Speaking of interior play, I have the 7 St. Mary's Gales against number 10 Vanderbilt. One of the easier picks for me. I love St. Mary's in this tournament. Watched several incredibly stressful St. Mary's Gonzaga games this year. And there is a lot to like about them. They play very, very slow. They really like forcing teams out of their rhythm and into theirs. A little Virginia-esque in that regard. They are huge. They start 2 6'10" or above guys in, what are their names? Mitchell Saxon and Harry Wessels are the names of their 2 centers that they like to play side by side. They have a ton of size, some good backup bigs as well. And yeah, they're really, really good. They're ranked in the top 25. I was surprised to see them get a 7 seed. They have the second best offensive rebounding rate in Division I. They get 40% of their own misses. I just think a team that's just going to absolutely dominate on the glass, dominate down low, and hopefully shoot better than they did against Gonzaga in the WCC title game, is a real threat against any team in the country. I really like St. Mary's. I really like their chances in this tournament. And to have them matched up against the worst SEC team to make this tournament in Vanderbilt feels like a gift. So sorry, Vandy. I don't have anything to say about you except you suck, and you're going to get eaten up. This is one of my locks of the tournament. If St. Mary's loses to Vandy, I'll have to eat something silly.
I'll tell you what, I'm in the same boat, man. I think St. Mary's has this game on lock. I think that they're just... you look at KenPom, you look at the net, all that kind of stuff is just like indicative of St. Mary's being underrated and Vanderbilt being way overrated coming out of the SEC. I think this kind of game is where I was looking at it and I was like, why the heck did Vanderbilt make this over a good team, like another good team out of some other conference that could have deserved it? Mm-hmm. I think St. Mary's can run away with this game. Run away with is hard because they don't score as quickly, but they will hold Vanderbilt to sub 50 points.
I appreciate that.
All right. With this game, for me, Michigan State versus Bryant, not too big of a challenge here for me. Michigan State's looked really good as the season has gone along. Tom Izzo's group has been very impressive, and they've been playing really well against good teams. I don't expect them to take a step down against Bryant. Maybe in the next couple rounds, we'll see if I have them dropping off. But for now, I think Michigan State against Bryant's a pretty easy 2-seed victory.
Yeah, I love it. I really like Michigan State. Izzo's the man. He's got great guards. Take him. On my side, we'll keep it similarly short. We have 2-seed Alabama against 15-seed Robert Morris. Alabama is a team with some weaknesses, but shooting and athleticism are not 2 of those. When you have a team this good at shooting the ball and this good at getting up and down the floor, playing against a much lower seed, it's just very unlikely to see an upset. They do not have a black hole-like player like a Caleb Love. They do not have glaring weaknesses inside. And they've got a ton of shooting on their roster. So hoping for a Virginia type sneak out enough points for the upset game is not going to happen. Sorry, Robert Morris. Good to see you here. We'll talk more Bama later, but I have them advancing.
Deal. All right. We didn't talk about this before the pod. Do you want to go through the South, or do you want to just keep going down into the West and Midwest, or through our conferences that we have going right now?
Let's go all the way down, because I think the next couple rounds, since we've already talked about the teams, will be much quicker. So we can kind of deep dive all the teams, and then we'll fill out the rest of the bracket.
Deal. All right. Out of the West, the number one seed.
I'm so sorry. I take it back. These teams are all fresh in mind. You're right. Let's finish up these regions. Let's get our final four picks.
All right, deal. So, my matchup, second round of 32. We've got the winner of the Auburn. I don't even remember what we said those teams were. Auburn versus Creighton.
Alabama State and St. Francis University.
Thank you. The winner of that one, and then Creighton coming out of the Louisville-Creighton game. This one is an interesting one because Auburn... my thoughts about Auburn are actually that it is probably one of the best teams that we have in the tournament. And obviously it's a 1 seed, so that is correct. But when I was looking at just comparatively the numbers in terms of shooting efficiency and things like that, comparing it to a team like Alabama, teams like Florida and Tennessee, like they are a tier above the other teams in the SEC when it comes to just their consistency. So I really like Auburn as a team in this tournament. And with that being said, Kalkbrenner and this Creighton team they're good, but they're also 3-5 against top 25 opponents. And they have not faced a team like Auburn here. Auburn shoots the ball super efficiently, like I said, and I think they will just be able to kind of run all over this Creighton team and dominate. So I've got Auburn moving on.
Love it. I've got Duke Baylor on my side. This one's pretty simple. I am waiting for my opportunity to pounce on Duke. But this is not it. I cannot take a 5-12 in quad 1 games, 2 rounds into the NCAA tournament, upsetting the number 1 overall seed. I've got Duke advancing.
Yeah, I like that one. Baylor, after that first game against Gonzaga, when we talked about it, I was just like, I whatever they did the rest of the season, I couldn't be super impressed by. So not super against that pick at the moment. Totally. This one is interesting for me. I have got UC San Diego versus Yale, the number 12 versus number 13 seed in the round of 32. This is a tough one, but I think I'm going to go purely based on kind of efficiencies. And what it comes down to is Yale is just such a solid team. And I think in the same boat that it's like, you're probably going to talk about this when it comes to Oregon, but it's a coach that's been here before. They've coached their way through a couple rounds previously. It's like Yale has been here before. UCSD, you were a nice story, but I do have Yale moving on. They've got Pulakidis to carry them to victory.
Love it. Love Yale in the Sweet 16. Who'da thunk? Let's go. Do you remember it was when we were at Oregon State, Yale made, I think, the Sweet 16 that year as a 12 seed or something?
I think so.
And they had that player that looked exactly like our buddy Brett. It was very strange watching him just hit threes all the time. We're like, God, that looks like Brett out there. All right, on my side now, I've got Oregon versus Akron. Akron's coming off their upset win over Arizona. Once again, I love this situation here. I've got Akron coming up against 5 seed Oregon, who I really like. Akron is coming off their big upset. I'm not taking Akron another round. I'm taking Oregon. I think Akron is emotionally drained after their championship, upsetting Arizona. I think Oregon takes advantage. Oregon advances.
Yeah, I like that one. I think Oregon is a really good team here, so I'm not going to complain. I think also in the same vein as Yale, but Dana Altman is a coach that's been here before. He's done it. Brought Oregon to the Elite Eight while we were at Oregon State, and they've been really good for so long, and they're bound to win 2 games in every single tournament. With a week to prepare, Dana Altman will get you 2 wins. So I think that's a safe bet. Next up, we've got Ole Miss versus Iowa State, the 6-3 matchup for me. And in this one, this is where Ole Miss's journey and my SEC hatred comes in, and Iowa State moves on pretty handily in my eyes. I think this is another case where it's like the SEC is a little too highly rated. A number 6 seed for this Ole Miss team that went 22-11 is just not that great. Also 3-9 against top 25 teams. Like, they did not perform well against both the SEC teams that they played and the other opponents that were actually in the top 25 early in the season. So I think they just haven't proven themselves to me, and Iowa State has been so good this entire season. I don't think there's anything else to say. They're just really solid. Number 9 in net, all that good stuff.
Yeah, if you have any top 10 Ken Palm teams not making it to the Sweet 16, you have some explaining to do, so I appreciate that. Moving over to my other side, I've got number 3 Wisconsin against number 6 BYU. Here's where my, second round upsets start coming in. I'm taking number 6 BYU over the Badgers. I just think, they've got a really sweet offense. Wisconsin's defense is solid, but it's not really game-changing in my opinion. And as these later rounds come along, to me it becomes more about okay, unless you have a game-breaking defense, whose offense is better? I like BYU's offense. I like the way they're playing. I think they're playing some of their best ball right now. I do have BYU advancing.
Yeah, we talked about that I talked about this in the first round, but yeah, I really like BYU's offense right now, and Wisconsin, being such a balanced team, I just think that they lack the kind of offensive power that I think BYU will be able to stomp them with. So I like that pick. This next matchup is interesting. New Mexico, number 10 seed versus Michigan State in the 2. I really, really do like Michigan State in this tournament. I think Michigan State's proven it throughout the course of this season that they just are kind of dogs defensively. But at the same time, they shoot the 3 at a sub 31% clip. They are bottom 330th in all of NCAA basketball. Is their defense enough to get them through a New Mexico team that's very stout? And obviously the what's his name, Donovan Dent, is a really good scorer. They're a team that has a guy that they can turn to and lead their team. It's a favorable upset, I think, if you could convince yourself that New Mexico has this opportunity. But Michigan State is so good. I think this is where I have to go with Michigan State, even though my heart says New Mexico.
Yeah, they're kind of like Gonzaga minus some offense plus some defense and rebounding. Honestly, not a horrible comparison. The 3-point shooting will get them at some point. We'll see if you have them making it to your Final Four or national championship. But at some point, you're going to have to hit some threes, and I think that's going to bite them. But in these first couple of rounds, yeah, I think they're just going to dominate. They play really good Izzo-style basketball, so no surprise there. On my side, I've got number 7 St. Mary's against number 2 Alabama, and here is maybe my biggest upset pick, taking number 7 St. Mary's over number 2 Alabama. I said if you don't have a top 10 Ken Palm team in the third round, you have to explain yourself, and so I have to say, there are reasons for this. A huge reason is that Grant Nelson is probably the second best player on Alabama, and we have no idea if he's going to play in the tournament. He had a fairly gnarly looking knee injury in the SEC semis. That's a very big deal. Alabama is leading the country in points per game. Their offense is awesome. We talked about that, but I do think their weaknesses are rebounding, interior defense, and I do think those are both areas that St. Mary's can really exploit. I expect them to have a very dominant rebounding game and a very dominant defensive game. And it's also one of those things, this game is going to be decided by whose style of play ends up winning out. If St. Mary's is forced to play at Alabama's pace, Alabama will absolutely win this game, no doubt about it. But I'm counting on maybe the loss of some key players and, St. Mary's just really slow, bruising style to throw Alabama out of their rhythm. Fans come around, slow, grindy second half, and St. Mary's pulls out the upset. So I do have number St. Mary's advancing past Alabama.
Yeah, this is a game that it's two of the an immovable object and a unstoppable force.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
It's Alabama versus the St. Mary's defense, and it's going to be very, very interesting. I, in a couple brackets, do have St. Mary's winning this game, and for the exact reason you said. So I like the pick. I can see it happening, and if Alabama's missing their second best player, which really it's Sears and then kind of whoever they can throw, but Alabama just, if they can't get going fast, I don't really see them excelling in what they do. So I do like that opportunity for St. Mary's to win. All right, bouncing back to the South, we've got the number 1 seed Auburn versus the number 13 seed Yale. And this is where the Cinderella story probably comes to an end. There's an argument to be made in my head that this big bunch of white boys out of Yale just really gets in the heads of Auburn and does something, but I really don't think that Johnny Broome, probably being the second best player in all of college basketball for Auburn, can be slowed down. He's a guy who's averaging 19 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, and 3 assists in 30 minutes. Like, if this guy needs to score 25, he's just, playing 40 minutes in the game, and he'll score 25. So I do really like Auburn here. Like I said, they're probably one of my favorite teams in this tournament, ahead of the other SEC teams. So Auburn, I think, is going to knock out Yale and take out the Cinderella story from the South.
Yeah, I do just have to say, in Auburn-Yale, you're doing the 100% right thing. This is why I really like Michigan as a 5 seed to potentially make the Elite Eight, is Auburn is my least favorite 1 seed in this tournament. They were, the favorites early in the year, but they lost 3 out of their last 4 games coming into this tournament. I do think they're vulnerable at several levels. I think their offense is not nearly as good as people thought it actually was there for a spell. Defensively, they're awesome, but I'm really, no disrespect, War Eagle and all that, but I do think Auburn is vulnerable. So
you can disrespect them.
I don't have them making my Elite Eight, but I appreciate that you do. You can't argue with the 1 seed making it there. On my side, I have 1 seed Duke versus number 5 Oregon. I really want to knock Duke off, but I really just can't. They're the only team in the sport that's top 5 in both offensive and defensive advanced metrics. They probably have the National Player of the Year, and they're going to get a lot of whistles because they're Duke. I think this is as far as Oregon goes. This is pretty classic Oregon behavior, making it to the Sweet 16 and then losing. This is about when they like to bow out of these tournaments. I hate to do it, but I do have Duke advancing.
Yeah. Like I said, you give Dana Altman a week to prepare, and he'll win 2 games. It's that second week that he really struggles with, and this is no different. I think Duke and just their level of talent, especially if Cooper Flagg is at his peak, like even though it's a bunch of freshmen against a bunch of seniors and upperclassmen at Oregon, I just think Duke's talent is going to outplay them there. All right, with my next pick, we have got number 3 Iowa State versus number 2 Michigan State. So kind of chalk here in this bottom half of the South bracket, but this is where things can get a little interesting. It's an Iowa State team that is very good, and I think generally better in terms of just pure statistics. Obviously they're better shooters. Like I said, Michigan State cannot shoot the 3 worth of crap. The one thing that Michigan State does have going for it is their defense and defensive efficiency. They've also just been super good against top 25 teams. Going 8-2, like I said, is just crazy. But I also think that kind of stat gets inflated by being in the Big Ten. I think it gets inflated by playing tougher teams earlier on in the season. And I don't think that it is as valuable as just being solid throughout the course of the season. And that is why I've got Iowa State moving on past Michigan State. This is where their shooting woes finally catch up to them, and Iowa State moves on, and they kind of break over that hurdle that they've been struggling with the last couple of years.
I dig it. No real argument there. I think that'll be a good game. 2 teams that offenses have kind of been struggling recently, but I appreciate it. On my side, I've got 6 BYU versus 7 St. Mary's, all white boy game. Let's go. BYU fans are going to be really excited for this one. This is also easy for me just in terms of in for a penny, in for a pound. BYU is just worse Alabama in terms of style of play. They similarly really talented, dynamic offense that moves the ball and can shoot the ball, but Alabama's just better at it. So if I think that St. Mary's can throw them out of their rhythm and win that game, there's no reason to think that they wouldn't do it here against BYU. It would be contradictory of me to have them losing to Alabama or beating Alabama and then losing to BYU. So I do have St. Mary's advancing yet again.
Yeah, I think you nailed that one. I think those are two teams that can really grind it out. But BYU's force is just less. It's a little bit more stoppable. If you catch my drift from what I said last time. So I agree with that pick. All right, it's the Elite Eight matchup out of the South. We've got Auburn, the number 1 seed, versus Iowa State, the number 3 seed. Looking at this, only 6% of people are picking Iowa State to win this side of the bracket. It's kind of crazy to come out of the Final Four from Iowa State, who is a team that is 31st in field goal percentage, 77th in three-point field goal percentage, and 53rd in free throw percentage. This is a team that can get things done offensively. At the same time, they're just not as explosive. They haven't been tested as much, and like you said, they've been struggling a little bit more offensively. If they have caught fire by this point in the tournament, if they're still around, there's a real chance that Iowa State could beat Auburn here. But I think the star power of Auburn in terms of their best player being the second best player in the nation is just that much better for them. I do have Auburn coming out of the South.
Yeah, I hate to see it, but yeah, Iowa State, after starting 15-1, have gone 9-8 since.
Yeah.
One of their 4 best players, Keyshawn Gilbert, is not going to be available for the tournament. So I appreciate you having to make it this far. I think they're really talented, but I do think them upsetting Auburn here is a step too far. So I hate to see the 1 seed in the Final Four, but I appreciate what you did it. And this sucks. I'm going to have to do the exact same thing. We're sorry. We've had some good upsets. I can at least promise a 1 seed won't be in my Final Four in my last region, but I have to take Duke over St. Mary's. For me, the main reason is that Duke's bigs are really talented shooters. That's a challenge St. Mary's will not have had to face up to this point. It's going to pull their 2 bigs out of their normal positions, and I think is going to really screw with their style of play. I don't think they have anybody that's a good matchup for Cooper Flagg. Their bigs are too slow, and their guards are too small. I think if they get there, will have a field day against the St. Mary's team. And I do just think if it's a really close game down the stretch, Duke's going to get some whistles because nobody wants to see St. Mary's in the Final Four. So I do have Duke making it to the Final Four. 2 1 seeds. We got to be better than this. Tyler. So that's our summation for our first 2 sections. Let's dive into the next 2.
Yeah. All right. So out of the West, we're just gonna keep rattling them off. Out of the West, we've got Florida versus Norfolk State, the 1-16 matchup. And this one's not very challenging. We're not going to talk too much about it. Florida is, I think, a notch down from Auburn, in my opinion, but I still think they're a much better team than Norfolk State. So I've got Florida moving on.
Yeah, I have 1 seed Houston playing number 16 SIUE. Whew, SIUE.
Good luck, man.
I don't know what that stands for. I have Houston advancing.
Something Southern Illinois, Southern Iowa, something like that.
Southern Illinois University of Economics? That can't be right.
That feels good. They got those econ boys out there. Either way, we've got the 1 seeds moving on in that first round matchup. This is where things get a little interesting. UConn, number 8 seed versus Oklahoma for me out of the West in the 9 spot. This game is something that I just think that Dan Hurley, given a week for, he's a coach that's won the last 2 titles for the NCAA tournament. It's like this guy has prepared enough to be able to win this game in any sort of matchup. They do match up a little bit more closely than you would think, just in terms of pure statistics, in terms of field goal percentage, things like that, free throw percentage. But Oklahoma's, like we said, 6-12 in the SEC. They just haven't beat the good teams that they've played. Versus UConn, 14-6 in their conference, that has some really, really good teams out of the Big East. So I've got UConn moving on, but it's mostly based on just their ability to win against good teams versus Oklahoma's inability to do so.
Yep, I appreciate that. I hate to see it, but I appreciate the thought. I've got number 8 Gonzaga versus number 9 Georgia. We'll have more to say on this game later. Gonzaga is the only Washington representative in the field of 64, so we will deep dive this game specifically. But in the meantime, I'll just say that Georgia's a pretty low-tier SEC team. I was expecting Gonzaga to get a 6 seed. They're ranked top 10 in the net. The fact that they fell to 8 kind of sucks as a Zag fan because we'll have probably the Houston matchup in the second round, which is not ideal. But it sucks for Georgia more than it sucks for us because I do think Georgia's got some talent. They've got some athleticism and size, but I do think they will be outclassed by a team who is much better than the number next to their name. So I do have Gonzaga advancing.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think Gonzaga, like you said, is just very underrated, and so getting a tough matchup from that for Georgia, I've got Gonzaga moving on. All right, this is where things get a little interesting again because your boy has the number 5 seed Memphis versus number 12 seed Colorado State. And the real kicker here is both of these teams are very, very good. I think Colorado State has won at least their last 10 games. I think they're actually won their last 14, if I'm not mistaken. And then Memphis has won 9 of their last 10. Both teams are on heaters right now. Both teams shoot the ball really well. They've played pretty decently, very similar in the net rank. Colorado State at 47th, Memphis at 49th. They're very, very even teams when it comes to this matchup. So I really like it a lot in terms of just pure basketball. But the one thing that Memphis is missing is Tyrese Hunter, one of their guards who's averaging almost 14 points a game, playing 34 minutes for this team. he's out for the tournament. And so with that being the case, Colorado State having Nick Clifford averaging 19 points per game, almost 10 rebounds, they've got all their team. They've been playing together the entire time. I think Colorado State has the ability to turn it on and win this other 5-12 matchup. So you better have Clemson winning because I've got no 5s winning.
Yeah, I really like this pick. I'll just say in my personal bracket, Colorado State is my only double-digit seed to make the Sweet 16. Yeah, I think they're really good. I think Nick Clifford's going to be an NBA guy. Memphis plays in a bad conference, and I think they're overrated, so I do like this Colorado State pick. On my side, I do have Clemson McNeese in the 5-12, and I do have Clemson winning. I think Clemson's really good this year, 18-2 in the SEC. They're really, really talented. Yeah, I guess I don't have a ton to say about them at this time. I just think they are one of the more well-rounded teams in basketball. They do everything well, and I love McNeese making the tournament, but I don't think this is the 5 seed to do it, so we have Clemson advancing. I do think probably the second best team in the ACC as far as I'm concerned, behind Duke, so yeah, we'll take them going forward.
Yeah, I honestly really like Clemson in this tournament. They've got a lot of returning players from their good run last year, and I think they just got that experience. Really tough for McNeese. I actually do think that they're a good team. If they had been playing in that 6-11 Ole Miss matchup, I think that I would have had them moving on. McNeese is a really good team here, just a tough matchup against a really good Clemson team. For this number 4 seed Maryland versus number 13 seed Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon, after their crazy darling run last year, I think they just they over-exceeded expectations this year in terms of where people think that they are going to be. Maryland, a team that lost to my Washington Huskies this season, so I think that they are probably worse than they are, considering the Huskies were last in the Big Ten. But I do have Maryland advancing here. They're just a really solid team, 10th in the net, and out of the Big Ten, they're probably, they fought well against Michigan and probably could have won that game outright if they just had executed a little bit better and Michigan had not gotten a couple of foul calls gone their way. So I do really like Maryland here, but a tough one for Grand Canyon, and they're kind of a darling from last year. So sorry, boys.
Sorry, boys, indeed. Yeah, I appreciate that. On my side, I have Purdue High Point. I'm employing my John Kerry patented take your upsets when you like the team in the next round thing. Purdue is the 4th best team in the Big Ten, a Big Ten that I do not personally find to be particularly deep. Braden Smith is a stud, but I don't like the rest of their roster. This High Point team, I don't know much about, but they're riding a 14-game win streak, and they have a top 30 offensive efficiency team in college basketball. I like good offense in the tournament. I don't like Purdue. I'm taking High Point as a 13 seed to advance.
Nice. Yeah, in most of my brackets, to be honest, I'm kind of out on Purdue. I do have High Point moving on in a lot of them. I think it's a pretty popular upset pick, but at the same time, I think there's a reason for that. Purdue just doesn't have the bigs to really go deep in the tournament, and yeah, I think this is a team that they could win this first round, but I think they're going to have a really tough time getting any deeper. So taking the upset here is also pretty good value.
Yeah.
My next game, number 6 Missouri versus number 11 Drake. This is, I think, one of the more fun matchups in terms of Missouri's a high-flying, 85 points a game offense versus the Drake allowing 58 points a game. It's similar to the St. Mary's matchup. Drake is just a little bit more of points allowed, and I think it's kind of the Missouri less offense, but still being decent. At the same time, it's the SEC, and we've been talking a lot of crap about the SEC. Missouri went 10-8 in conference. They're 22-11 on the season. Drake went 30-3 on the season. They haven't played anybody in the top 25. But they've been just as good. They've been super, super good this year in the upper percentile of net ranking in KenPom. I just really like Drake here. I don't know why. They've got Bennett Sturts, a guy who's scoring over 19 points per game, and I just think, and I get a good feeling about the Drake Bulldogs here. I don't know what else to say.
Drake Bulldogs, you're a wild man. Love the SEC hate. People in the South hate us. This is why. On my side, I've got number 6 Illinois against the 11 seed Texas or Xavier, depending on who comes out of that first 4. I'm a Illini hater, and I am taking the upset.
Wow.
They have to play 2 teams, Texas and Xavier, at the same time. That's not fair. No, this Illinois team, they're really streaky from 3. They've been good in the Big Ten, but once again, I'm kind of a Big Ten hater this year. Their best players are young Eastern Europeans who are, still just kind of getting their feet underneath them. I think this team will be a lot better in a year or two. But I think they're young. I think they're streaky. I think they are overrated based on their conference. And got to give a little something back to the SEC. We've had a lot of upsets. I took Alabama down to a bunch of white guys in the second round. It's only fair. I do think Texas will beat Xavier if anybody cares. That Texas sneak in. I think Texas has a pretty awful record. It's pretty horrendous, but they do have some awesome wins. I think they are a sneaky 1-win team. I'll say that much.
All right. I can get behind it. I think this is one of those 6-11 matchups that you can take or kind of the 11 wins against the 6 matchup that you can take and feel a little more comfortable about than the other ones. Yeah, I think either Texas or Xavier has a good chance to beat Illinois. I think it's a tough part of the bracket to predict. I will say, like that little tiny quadrant of, or I guess not quadrant, but that section of 3 games with Kentucky is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, agreed.
My next game, we've got number 3 Texas Tech versus number 14 UNC Wilmington. I'm not going to say too much here. Texas Tech has a couple guys kind of on the injured reserve, but they will be coming back, I believe, before the tournament starts. And Texas Tech has been really, really good. If you can't tell, I'm kind of a Big 12 guy. I kind of like the Big 12 this year. And Texas Tech is no different. I think that they will stomp UNC Wilmington and shoot their way into a solid victory. But UNC Wilmington, nice season, guys. You'll be back soon.
Love it. Love to see it. No argument there. We've picked plenty of double digit seeds. We don't have to do one more. I've got number 3 Kentucky against number 14 Troy. Kentucky getting a 3 seed's a little surprising. They have had kind of a weird year, but they do have some good wins, including a tight one against my Gonzaga Bulldogs. Troy is named after a city that fell over 2,000 years ago, over 4,000 years ago, actually. So I'm taking Kentucky. I'll have more to say about them later.
Yeah, I think Kentucky is an interesting one, and like I said, that little section of 3 games is going to be a fun one. But yeah, we'll dive into that one a little bit more. I think we both have some interesting thoughts about Kentucky here. Next matchup, number 7 Kansas versus number 10 Arkansas. This is an interesting one. You got Bill Self and his long-standing Kansas Jayhawks, and then you've got the new John Calipari Arkansas team. And I think when it comes down to it, this Arkansas team is just they're out of the SEC. They got a nice bid, but they went 8-10. At the same time, Kansas went 11-9 in the Big 12 and underperformed a lot of people's expectations. The one thing that I will say is they've got the experience of Dickinson and just a really solid veteran group of guys that underperformed here, but I think they can turn it on. Arkansas has not a lot of experience in the tournament, and so I think with that being the case, Kansas will move on here, but I don't really love Kansas as a team in general in the tournament. So tough one for Arkansas here. Tough matchup for Calipari.
Yeah, I'm not sure you've picked an SEC team not named Auburn to win a game.
Yeah.
Pretty slanderous.
That's how it is, man.
I actually do like Arkansas in this game just because I think Kansas sucks.
I did pick Florida. Sorry, just gonna note I did pick Florida.
Good. I do think Kansas sucks, but I appreciate both these teams are very sketchy, so I'll allow it. Next up for me, I have UCLA, Utah State. Big Ten slander. Let's keep it going. I have Utah State upsetting UCLA. I really like Utah State's game. I think these Mountain West teams always play scrappy, and I like their games come tournament time. I think UCLA is just pretty bad this year. They did fine, 22-10 in Big Ten play, but I mean, I don't really see the 3-point shooting. I don't really see the defense. I think they have a lot of vulnerabilities. This is one of those upsets where maybe I'm just trying to manifest it because I don't like the Bruins, but I am taking the Utah State. Ooh, what are they? The Utah State Bulldogs? They can't all be Bulldogs, can they?
Are they Aggies? Do I want to call them Aggies?
Oh, I kind of like Aggies. We'll go with it because I don't have it pulled up, but I do have them upsetting.
Yeah, I like this one. The Mountain West just loves being a 10 or 11 seed and upsetting. So I think Utah State coming out of that conference is in a good spot here to make a little run and get some revenge on Danny Sprinkle and his UW Huskies.
You're right. It's Aggies. I got it pulled up here. Nice night.
That's all from the Danny Sprinkle and Great Osabor transition into UW from there. So All right. Next matchup, we've got number 2 St. John's versus number 15 Omaha. I'm not going to stick on this one too long. St. John's has been very, very stout defensively. They're really similar to Michigan State, actually. They don't shoot the ball very well, but they do play one hell of a defense, and I've got them moving on against Omaha. Tough one for them, but Omaha went 22-12 in, I don't even know what conference SUMM stands for, but it can't be anything good. So yeah, St. John's moving on. Number 2 beats the 15 seed.
Nice. I've got number 2 Tennessee versus 15 Wofford. I am copying your move. I think Tennessee is awesome. I think they're one of the best teams in college basketball this year. I like them more than Auburn in terms of SEC teams. They are really good on both sides of the ball, particularly defensively. They are big, they are strong, they are fast, they rebound the hell out of the ball, they play great defense. Zakai Ziegler, the point guard for the team, senior guy, really smart, plays really hard. I love these senior tough guards in the tournament. I really, really like Tennessee this year. I'll spoil and say that in one of my 3 brackets, I have Tennessee winning the national championship, and I do have them beating Wofford.
In that one? No, yeah, Tennessee, there's a case to be made storyline wise that it's like the Rick Barnes send-off season. Tennessee's been right on the cusp for so long. Like, this is the time for Tennessee to win the Natty, and they've been waiting quite a while for it. I don't know that this is, the proper moment to discuss that, but I do think that Tennessee is very good, and I will say I have them winning one as well in one of my brackets. So I like them a lot. Even they are out of the SEC, but I do like them. All right, second round of 32 out of the West. We've got number 1 seed Florida versus number 8 seed UConn, and this is where my SEC hatred really comes out. I know that Florida is good. I know that they are a solid offensive team that's on a little bit of a heater, winning 9 of their last 10. But UConn is just they're just really good. They're just really efficient, and they're also coached by Hurley, who is he's just one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. There's really no argument to be made. Like, he could have been an NBA coach. This is a guy who teaches NBA level stuff, and given a week to prepare, I think he has the ability to take down a Florida team that is very intimidating. Florida is very, very good. But at some point, a 1 seed has to go down in this bracket, and this is that time. UConn takes down Florida.
Wow, this is a big upset. I'll just say, in most of my brackets, I have Oklahoma upsetting UConn, or I guess beating UConn. It's an 8-9, so not really an upset. This is pretty surprising to me. Florida's really good. I think them and Tennessee really remind me of each other in terms of just really big, strong, fast guards that scare the crap out of me. And UConn lost to Dayton this year. But I guess just purely on resume, I can respect taking Hurley to the Sweet 16. They are, we're about to talk about my 1 seed, but it is nice to have one seed not make the Sweet 16, so I appreciate you doing it, but I do like Florida. On my side, I've got number 1 seed Houston against number 8 Gonzaga. This sucks. I love the Zags this year, and I do think this is a team that can beat anybody. They have not had a single really bad loss this year, just a lot of really close, brutal losses down the stretch. I just think this is a bad matchup for the Zags. I think Houston's guards are some of the best in the country. They are number 3, I believe, in KenPom, and they just play really good offense. Bruce Pearl, that's Auburn. Sampson, what's Sampson's first name, their head coach?
I think it's like Kelvin, right?
Kelvin Sampson, thank you very much, is just one of the best coaches in the sport, and I just think Houston's really, really good. I think their guards are just going to dominate Nembhard and Hickman physically. The way Gonzaga can win this is if, Ike and Huff particularly can really get offense down low going throughout the game. But I think their shooting and their guards' ability to attack down low is just going to be poison for us. I think Ike is going to be in foul trouble immediately. I think Nembhard isn't going to know what to do on defense. I hate to do it, but I do have the Zags losing and Houston advancing. Yeah.
I think Nembhard is really the fault here, and I don't mean it in a bad way. Nembhard's been a great guy for the Zags, but Houston is going to try and get switches onto Nembhard basically every possession. He's just going to be attacked every time. So I do have Houston moving on in most of my brackets. There is one that, of course, I have Gonzaga winning because we got to represent, but we got to be realistic here on this podcast. And I do think that Houston is the better team with the more well-rounded guards, and I think that them moving on is fair. All right, this is John's signature move. Colorado State moved on, is the number 12 team coming up against number 4 Maryland, and although I don't like Maryland that much, this is probably where Colorado State can fall. Maryland has had a really good season so far, all things considered. Obviously, Colorado State at this point will have been on like a 15-game win streak, so great for them. Another Mountain West early victory in the tournament as well. But Maryland is probably too big, probably too strong, and just has that like dog in them. I was watching their Michigan game, and I was just like, man, I can't believe that they lost this one, and they're going to be coming into this tournament pissed. So I do have Maryland moving on and having a great game. This one, matchup-wise, I think this is a lot better than people would expect, but I think that Maryland will pull it out.
Yeah, I love you employing my signature move. I really like it. I hate to say it, but you're going to see my signature move a lot here in this side of the bracket. The next 3 games all involve double-digit seeds. I'll let you guess how many I have winning. Number 5 Clemson versus number 13 High Point. I'm afraid that High Point hit their high point beating Purdue. This will be a low point for the program. I think Clemson's really good. I want to talk more about them in the next round, but I have them advancing.
Yeah, I like that one. I think High Point is everyone's favorite darling to employ the John Kerry technique. So we'll stick with that here on the pod as well.
Patented. Verbal trademark.
All right, this next game for me is the Drake Bulldogs, the number 11 seed, versus the number 3 seed Texas Tech. An interesting matchup. Texas Tech has a lot of guys that are coming off or just like have been battling through injuries as the season has gone on. And like I said, Drake is kind of the St. Mary's of this part of the division, but they're just worse at it. And so with that being said, Texas Tech being such a good team offensively and their ability to shoot the three, I do have Texas Tech moving on. Drake, they can slow the game down, but at the end of the day, if you can shoot threes, you're able to kind of speed up the game. And so I think Texas Tech has a good matchup going into Drake either way.
Yep, I dig it. I've got number 3 Kentucky versus 11 Texas or Xavier. I'm going to get really lazy here. I don't know which of these two teams are going to play, let alone advance past Illinois. So I am taking number 3 seed Kentucky. Kentucky has holes. They've got some injuries on this roster that are really going to affect them in the tournament. So it is a kind of a bummer having them in this position. I would love to knock them out early. But they've got talent, and I don't trust whoever that 11 seed is going to be. I do have Kentucky advancing.
Yeah, I think I can talk about this. Jackson Robinson is so good for Kentucky. He's such a huge part, and the fact that he's out for this tournament is going to be a factor for them. We just don't know when that's going to be. I don't think that this Kentucky team is going to make it to the Final Four. I don't think they're going to make it that far in the tournament, but this game is a tough one to predict. Texas could have a good chance. Xavier could have a good chance, but it's just like we don't know who that matchup's going to be. Those teams could be hot, especially coming off 2 wins. Like they could be feeling themselves, but at the same time, it's just a lot safer to pick Kentucky here because we don't know how they will be doing.
Yeah, it's also worth noting Lamont Butler's shoulder is hurt, and he may or may not play in the tournament. So it could be 2 of their top 5 guys not playing.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yep. All right. This is an interesting matchup. We've got number 7 Kansas versus number 2 St. John's, and I talked about it in the last section in the last round. Kansas is so uncertain. The entire season they've been so uncertain. And St. John's has been so good defensively. I think that they will be a tough matchup. They're just so athletic at St. John's. And Pitino's been really an inspiring coaching discussion for the entirety of the college basketball season. So quite an interesting game here. But I do have St. John's moving past Kansas. I just don't trust any of Kansas's guys. They just haven't been consistent at all. I don't expect them to win 2 games, let alone the tournament.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I feel the same way about Kansas. I really like St. John's this year, even though they bought their team, but I won't talk about that. I've got number 2 Tennessee versus number 10 Utah State. I've already said what I said about Tennessee. I think they're awesome. No shade to Utah State. They might be my favorite 10 in this tournament, but I think they're coming up against a juggernaut here, so I do have Tennessee advancing. Just a note that in our Elite 8, you have the 2-3-4-8, and I have the 1-2-3-5. You see the cost of us taking all these 10-seed upsets in the first round. It's costing us with pretty chalky finishes, but proud of you for knocking off Florida.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I'm going to continue that knockoff here. And number 8, UConn, coming up against number 4, Maryland. I don't trust Maryland. I've said it 3 times already, and I'm going to say it one more time. Maryland, they lost to the University of Washington Huskies, who went 4-12 in Big Ten play and were last, didn't even make the Big Ten tournament. Maryland cannot win this many games in a row in a tournament that has such quality opponents. I like them as a team. I said it in the last round. I think they're good, but I think UConn is just more well coached. I think UConn has the better players. I think UConn had a rough season in by their standards. I think they were a top 3 team coming into this season, and they really have fallen off pretty hard. But at the same time, they've got the talent to be a top-tier team still. And I think they just had a rough stretch there in the middle of the season, and they've really turned it on recently. So got UConn winning this one as well.
Yeah, this is tough. See, this is what happens. You knock over one domino, and then you have the number 35 KenPom team in your Elite Eight. That's a tough pill for me to swallow, but I'm going to let you have it. On my side, I've got number 1 Houston against number 5 Clemson. Honestly, I think these two teams are pretty similar in terms of types of play. They both really lean on their guards. They both have 2 really big, really sweet shooting guards. As far as I'm concerned, this game is kind of a coin flip. This is also typically, no disrespect to Kelvin Sampson and this excellent Houston program, but this is when they like to sputter out, is right around here. With that being said, and with the similarities in style of play, I'll take the lower seed on the coin flip, knock out my 1 seed, and have Clemson advance.
Yeah, I like it. I think Clemson is, I think I said this in the first round, they're just like a really good team. Like I said, tough game for McNeese to pull here, but in this sense, Clemson has the potential to be a Elite Eight type team, I think, and the upset against Houston is not unwarranted. So I like the pull. All right, Texas Tech versus St. John's. It's so tough because Texas Tech has, like I said, guys coming off injury. They're an offensive juggernaut, and it's a very, very similar matchup to that South Division when it comes to the Iowa State, Michigan State. It's very similar in that regard. But I think St. John's just kind of has the magic of the season right now. I think a lot of people are riding with St. John's, this Rick Pitino team. So I am going to take St. John's over Texas Tech, purely vibes based though. I think there's a real chance Texas Tech can move on here, but it's kind of the weakest 16th of the quadrant, I think. So St. John's coming out of that would not be surprising to me.
Yep, yeah, I think you're right on the money here. I don't like Texas Tech as much as you do, and I think I probably like St. John's more. But it's your side of the bracket, so you control. I've got number 2 Tennessee versus number 3 Kentucky. This is where Kentucky meets their end. 2 injured, 2 inconsistent. The better team out of the SEC takes it. I love Tennessee, and I also love an all-orange matchup in my Elite Eight. Yes, this was my plan from the very beginning, and I achieved it. As much orange as can be seen on a court. I love a nice orange blackout game, and we got one here.
Yeah, it is worth noting that Kentucky did beat Tennessee twice this season, but they will be without some star players. So I think this is Tennessee's revenge game, to say the least.
Correct. I also think that's a very good note. I also think that's another reason I'm taking Tennessee. 2 good games. Well done by Kentucky to pull out both of those. Really hard to beat any opponent 3 straight times with this season and in a season. And I do think Tennessee's going to come in with a lot more fire if they get a 3rd chance at Kentucky. If they play this game, I don't even think it'll be particularly close. I think Tennessee's going to come out mad, and I think they'll stomp them.
Yeah, I like it. All right, this is quite the interesting matchup here. We've got the number 8 UConn Huskies in the Elite Eight versus the number 2 seed St. John's. I've wrestled with this in most of my brackets. I will say that I have UConn moving on. I think UConn as a team, like they've just really underperformed, and this is where they will be able to turn it on. I think that's my kind of major gamble on the season or in my brackets. That being said, St. John's is so good. They're so good. The problem is they don't shoot the 3. They don't make free throws. They don't do any of the things that you like to see from a team making it far in the tournament. And so that's, I think, why I've picked UConn so much. So I actually want to have a discussion with you, John. I think this is the point where I have to question, do I go with the statistical, more quality team in UConn, Or do I go with the team that I can kind of ride with in St. John's and ride the hype that has been their roster and their kind of like end of the season? They've gotten so much news just coming out about them with Rick Pitino's kind of turnaround of that roster. So I want to ask you a question, and then I'll make a pick. But where do you sit?
To me, it's not particularly close. UConn has been incredibly inconsistent, and their best wins are not particularly good wins. Their best win is probably against Gonzaga. Gonzaga is an 8 seed in this tournament, even if they're a top 10 net team. They also barely won that game. St. John's is 30-4. They have the best defense by all the metrics in D1 basketball. They've lost 4 games, and those 4 games have been lost by a combined 7 points. They're the 6th team since recording stats to ever do that, and that's since 1990. Of those 6 teams, 3 made the national championship game. I think St. John's is awesome, and I low-key think UConn sucks this year. But it's your side of the bracket, so do what you think is best.
Here's the counter to the UConn beating you as their best win. They're 5-2 against top 25 opponents. They've actually had a really good season when it comes to beating good opponents. I think they have played to their competition a little bit more frequently than they would have liked to over the course of the season. But with that being said, I like your argument, and I agree with you that St. John's is probably the better team and has played better over the course of the season. So we'll take St. John's here.
Yeah, I like that pick. It's also worth noting they, obviously Big East opponents, they have played twice and they beat UConn both times by a combined, I guess, they won by 6 and then they won by 14. So once again, I guess your argument, or my own argument, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, but I also just think St. John's is quite a bit better. All right, well, we did it. We have our final 4 teams. We have, yuck. We've picked so many upsets, but here we are with number 1 Auburn versus number 2 St. John's and number 1 Duke versus number 2 Tennessee.
You didn't talk through Clemson, Tennessee yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Clemson, Tennessee, Battle of the Orange.
Everybody's favorite.
Yeah, I think, honestly, Houston, Clemson, and Tennessee are all pretty similar in terms of their lean on guard play, their excellent three-point shooting from their guards, and their stoutness. But I think Tennessee just has some things neither of those teams have. I think they've got way better front court play. I think they have way more size at both center and at the wing. I think they're a better rebounding team. Not quite as dynamic offensively as Clemson, but I think they're a much better defensive team. I do have Tennessee advancing. So if you're wondering how I got there, that's my thought process.
Yeah, I like it. I think Clemson, like I said, really good team. Tennessee is just a better version of them, I think. When it comes down to it, Tennessee is a team with a lot of experience in the tournament. They've been here before, and they will be able to win a lot of games.
All right, Final 4. Who do you have making your national championship? You got Auburn and St. John's.
All right, and this is where I think it's more of a discussion to be had where we make these picks. Auburn, a team that has such a high ceiling. I think that's the real baseline for Auburn right now. It's just that Auburn they've been so good. They were so good early in the season, and then they kind of dipped a little bit, and then they're kind of trying to hit their stride. And if at this point they have made it this far, they will have hit their stride. And I think when it comes down to it, Auburn versus St. John's is going to be a very tough matchup. But St. John's has kind of proven time and time again this season that they've been able to turn it on and keep teams from scoring and use that defense in a real way. And like I said, I guess I don't even know if I said this, but they're 5-1 against top 25 opponents. Auburn 10-5. They're kind of, they've won 2/3 of their games. St. John's has won 5/6 of their games. It's a real tough game here, but I think I'm actually going to go St. John's. I think I'm riding with the storyline of Rick Pitino really turning this this team around and getting some crazy run out of this tournament.
Yeah, the other nice thing about St. John's is they're pretty well rested. Nice thing about playing in the Big East is, they've had their nice, good matchups. They scheduled a really nice non-con, so they've had some good games against top-end teams. But they've also had to, gotten the chance to beat up on Seton Hall and Butler and DePaul throughout the year. Yeah. So I do think they're a lot more rested than some of these SC teams that have just been working their butts off. So I appreciate that call. I kind of agree with you. On my side of things, I just can't do it. Duke can only make it so far. I refuse. I don't care if they were playing a 16 seed in this game. I refuse to have them as my pick for the national championship. I actually just like, too, that I finally get to talk about some of their weaknesses. I think they are pretty unathletic for, Elite Eight teams. I think they are, slow. I think their rebounding needs help. I think their guard play is subpar. Their strength is really in their front court and their shooting. But I do think coming up against a team like Tennessee, there are just cannonballs all over this roster in terms of size and speed and strength. I think this Tennessee team is capable of giving Cooper Flagg a really hard time, and I think they're just going to wear this team out. I don't think even the refs can get in the way of Rick Barnes making it to his first national championship game. Give me the Vols.
Yeah, I think this is one thing that I don't think you really touched on too much, but like the amount of experience on Tennessee and the lack of experience on Duke is going to be a real factor here. I don't think, in a single elimination style tournament, it's so hard to win so many games, and especially as young guys, they'll be looking ahead. They'll be looking at the national championship if they're in that Final Four. I don't think they're going to be as focused on this Tennessee game, and they need it because this Tennessee team is real. And look at that. With all of our SEC hatred, we've got an SEC team in the championship and two of them in the Final Four. So eat that.
Yeah, that is
all
great.
Right. With that, we have got the championship game. We love 2 seeds here on this channel. I think both of every single year we've picked a 2 seed to win, and this year it won't be any different.
Because we're not cowards picking 1 seeds. We're calculated cowards picking 2 seeds.
It won't be any different for us this year. Yeah, we've got 2 seeds in the championship. St. John's versus Tennessee. Similar styles of play. Walk me through your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go here in a minute, so we might just have to cut a tiny bit short at the end. But for me, this is an awesome game. I think it's going to be super, if we get it, it would be super physical, super defensive, super fast. Shooting wouldn't necessarily be the highest level we've seen, but I think it would be a really, really fun game. I hate to do it to my Vols, but I do just think St. John's, the momentum behind them if they get to this point is going to be ungodly. I think they'll be getting some friendly whistles, and I think a defensive, fight out on the court favors the best defensive team in college basketball. Tennessee would have to shoot their way to victory, which I think they're capable of, but I think the smarter pick is the defensive dominant team, and that is St. John's.
Yeah, this St. John's team reminds me a lot of the couple of the Louisville teams that Rick Pitino was able to make some deep runs with in the early 2010s. And with that being the case, they're just so good defensively. They're very middling, almost below average offensively. But if this game does turn into the rock fight that it kind of sounds like it would, St. John's has the potential to really pull it out. Tennessee, I like their team. It's a bunch of seniors. It's a lot of veterans, good leadership, things like that. Rick Barnes is a great coach. Matchup-wise, there's a question about St. John's missing a couple key players. So it is something to note. If they've made it this far in their injury list, then they'll have proven that they can do this without them. But at the same time, at the highest level, will they be able to perform? At the same time, we're riding with the storyline. This is a St. John's storyline, and we're just going to stick it out. It's 2 sides of a story. The Rick Barnes finishing out his season or finishing out his journey on top and winning the Natty versus the St. John's current season, kind of riding that high of being the team of destiny this year. So I'm down to stick with St. John's here.
Yeah, I also think you're right. It's a lot of storylines, but I also just think Rick Barnes choking again versus Rick Pitino is the absolute GOAT. He's probably buying strippers for all these players. It's too strong. It's too powerful to fight off that storyline. And I think if we get this matchup, that is how it would play out. A good matchup for St. John's, all things considered. I think a Duke or somebody would be maybe even tougher for them just because of the shooting. But we both have the Johnnies, so that makes it easy for us.
There it is.
What a draft, what a run. We probably won't have time to talk Gonzaga, Georgia this time, so we'll just have to talk about
it next week after the Zags win.
I was going to say, once the Zags win, we'll deep dive why they won, and if the Zags lose, then I'll be hanging from a ceiling fan, so we won't have to worry about it. So we're really in a solid place either way.
All right. I know you've got to go. He's got to go hit a tennis ball around. Not with the dog, so it's going to be a rare form for him. But For John Kerry, I'm Tyler Cartwright, and this has been the Sound Up Seattle Year 3 March Madness podcast. We hope you enjoyed the 100% correct, 100% accurate, and make these picks. Like I said, win all of that free insurance, everything that you can get from those brackets, and win your work pools, all that good stuff. You can find Sound Up Seattle on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, all at Sound Up Seattle, all lowercase, all one word. You can find us on YouTube, where we would have videos of this. I forgot to start the recording until about 10 to 15 minutes in, so there's going to be 10 to 15 minutes of our drawn-in faces that I'm going to make as we talk through this first part of the bracket. But for now, I hope you enjoyed these videos, and we hope you guys had a great one. You can find Sound Up Seattle or email us your questions, comments, concerns at soundupseattle@gmail.com. You can find me, Tyler, at TyCart50, everywhere it's important, and you can find John
hitting a tennis ball around, baby. Let's go.
Winning those tennis games. Let's go, baby. All right. With all that being said, let's go St. John's. That's why we're here.
Let's go Johnny's, baby.